Hello everyone!
Hi, how
Today
are
I'm
you?
making a Counter-Strike 2 tier list for all the guns. This is going to be for silver only. The reason I'm doing that is because I feel like the type of guns you see more or are better or worse depend on the player's rank. For example, some snipers are harder to use than maybe an AR for a worse player because aiming and timing and all of that plays a big role in how good a gun is. So let's get started into it. And I'll start off with the pistols. So the way I'm ranking this is in S tier. We have always viable, reliable in A, because it's like, yes, it's reliable, but maybe like you have to sacrifice a bit more money for an A tier gun or something like that. Because I'm taking everything into account. Like, yes, how good a gun is, but also how expensive it is. Because that plays a big factor in early rounds. And if you start winning early rounds, that could build up momentum. And that's how a lot of players sweep when you build up that momentum. And after that, we have decent. And this is just your like regular gun. You could pick it up off the ground. You will never be upset. You could buy it, and it's like whatever. It's good. C is situational. So this is when we get to actually the weapons that are here, you'll see why this is like situational because they definitely have a use, but there are other guns that can overshadow them in certain situations. And then D, we have very situational. These are the guns that just have very limited uses, like maybe one or two specific situations, and they'll actually help you in the round, which obviously is still good, but that means there are plenty of other better options. And then F, we have just trash, like guns you never want to use for silver, because it's just not worth it. So let's get started off. We'll start off with the pistols, and we'll go like in order pretty much. So here we have the Glock, and the Glock is people might be mad at me for this one, but honestly, when you see the other options as pistols, the Glock is trash for T side. Like I don't think the Glock is good at all. If you look at CT side, you have the USP, which is just a million times better, and that's how I'm comparing these weapons. What other options do you have? So with the pistols, there are plenty of other better options, in my opinion at least. All right, now next up, we have the P2000. And this is the second option, or one of the options you can use as your starting pistol on CT side. And it's honestly worse than the Glock just because the USP exists. If the USP didn't exist, the P2000 would probably be higher up, but because the USP exists, it has to be down here because no one is using the P2000 over the USP, and that's how I'm ranking these. You might be saying then, why is the Glock in F tier? Because it's the only option as your starting pistol. Yes, but remember, you can still buy pistols in your first round, and when you only have $800 to spare in the first round, it's not that big of a deal to buy a pistol worth a couple $100s. So I think that's fair for now to have the Glock there. And after that, let's move on to the USP. And the USP for a pistol gun is always viable. It has to be S tier because it's the best starting pistol. I guess you could argue like for some things it's not great. Like when you have, I guess it's because it's still a one shot without armor, which is the reason it's so good. I guess you could argue guns like the Deagle are better, but remember, this is silver only. With the USP, it's way easier to get a couple lucky headshots than it is with like a gun like the Deagle or a revolver. So after this, let's move on. Okay, now let's move on to the P250. And the P250 is decent. It's not as good as the USP just because this is the gun you start off with, and sometimes having a little bit more money does help. So I'd say there is a difference. But the reason the P250 is so good is mainly for T side. I feel like maybe you could use this sometimes over the USP, but usually you wouldn't because there's not much point. But for T side, the P250 is way better than the Glock, in my opinion. And remember, this is silver, so in a higher rank, yes, the Glock might be better because all you need is like two shots, two headshots, and you can like kill your opponent. But because it is um, silver, you have to remember, players aren't going to get those headshots every round. And if they do, maybe it's lucky. So that's why the P250 is considerably better than everything below it. And it's also a fair price. All right, next up, we have the 5.7. And the 5.7 is situational. It has some uses as a good rate of fire, but again, when you're playing CS, it's better to take your time and line up a good shot than start spraying. And you might argue because it's silver, oh, people are just going to shoot randomly and not have that patience. Yes, that's true, but that doesn't mean the 5.7 is a good gun just because you could shoot fast with it. With all the pistols, you could like tap fire or try to rapid fire. And with the 5.7s, you're just going to lose ammo way faster. And if you start spraying, you're going to just not be accurate and not hit your shots. So situational is good because maybe for close range and when there's multiple enemies, it can be good. But again, because it's silver, you're not going to use the gun to its fullest capabilities. After that, we have the Duel Barrettas. And honestly, the Duel Barrettas are just better 5.7s. They're cheaper and they do the same job but better. They're great for close range and you can hit multiple people. So if you kill one, you could quickly kill another one. And the reload time is bad, but again, if you go just to do your job, maybe get 1 or 2 picks and then your teammates could clean up the rest, that should be good. Especially when on pistol rounds, usually the whole team is moving up together. You're not going to find any lurkers, especially in silver. So I think that's a good place for them. I feel like they're very underrated and not many people use the Duel Berettas, but they deserve the credit. Again, the only reason I'm not in A, they're not put in A, is because they don't check all the like holes. They don't do everything needed, whereas the P250 I feel like could be used in every situation. With the Berettas, you can't really use them for long range. You can, but it's not efficient. Alright, next up we have the CZ. And between the CZ and the 5.7, honestly, I think I might put the CZ up here and move the 5.7 down to very situational. I think the CZ is better because it's cheaper and it's better for like aggression and like pushing in. And even a silver could use the CZ, maybe not well, but again, luck plays a role in this game, a very big role. And I feel like I usually see people getting more lucky with the CZ than the 5.7. That just may be because I don't really see people using the 5.7, but the CZ is definitely better, I'd say, in my opinion. Because again, it has more uses than the 5.7 does. The 5.7 is very, very specific on what it can do, where the CZ is very good on rushing. And you could get some pretty good snipes with it. Alright, next up. Now we have the Tech 9. And the Tech 9 is decent. I really like the fact that with this gun, when you move sideways, the bullet still goes perfectly straight. And a lot of silvers might not know about this, but when you're moving around and trying to shoot, it plays a big role that the bullets don't move with how you move, and that they just keep going straight. So for silvers, Tech 9 is actually a pretty decent gun, because you're still able to like scramble around and move around, and the gun still does its job. Alright, next up we have the revolver. And for silver, the revolver is honestly trash. I don't see why you would use the revolver. And again, none of these guns are bad. In CS, you can make any gun good if you're good enough. But for silvers, they're not going to use the revolver. And if they are, they're either a smurf or that's the only gun they ever used. And to add to that, I will be putting the Deagle. I don't want to put in F because the Deagle is better than the revolver, I think at least, and it's easier to use, especially for a silver. But again, at best, I think it's situational because
have you ever had a dream that you had
silver is not going to use the Deagle accurately. Any gun above it, they could do a way better job than with the Deagle. The Deagle, yes, like you could argue it's cheaper and it's like one shot to the head, but even higher level players don't always use the Deagle because it's not that reliable when someone else has a better gun. Obviously, if we're just talking pistol round only, and you're good with the Deagle, then it could go in S tier. Deagle could be one of the best guns in the game easily. But for a silver, I think at best you could do a situational. I'm only putting into situational is because I've run into a couple good Deagle players, but again, most of the time that's all what they use. So I think I'm actually going to put it in D. Because when I run into a good Deagle players, they don't buy any other guns. They only buy the Deagle. And sometimes that could be a detriment to the team when they just die off the bat. And you can't even pick up a good gun because all they had was the Deagle. Alright, now that we are done with the pistols, let's move on to the shotguns. And the first shotgun we have here is the Nova. And the Nova... With shotguns, it's very hard because I feel like they all do the same job in a way. It's just what you prefer more, like a bit more power but less accuracy, or more accuracy and less power. And obviously they're all pretty short range. But I feel like the Nova will be going into situational. The reason I'm putting the Nova in situational and not D or B is because it has like one job. You just peek a corner and you could get a shot off, either kill the guy or you just miss completely and do nothing. So I feel like that's what it does. Like you know what the gun is going to do before you buy it, and that's a good thing. But with the Nova, it's very hit or miss, literally. And the same thing with the sawed-off. I'm actually going to put the sawed-off in D because I feel like I miss more with the sawed-off than the Nova. The Nova feels more accurate. And again, they're both one-shots from close range. Oddly enough, I feel like when I do get shots off, this sawed-off is better than the Nova, but I miss way more with the sawed-off than the Nova. So I feel like that is fair, because they're very similar, but accuracy and range does play a big role, and the Nova I feel like has a bit more range than the sawed-off, and I feel like that makes a big difference for shotguns when they're already so close range. After that, we have the XM, and this may be surprising, but I'm actually going to put the XM in decent, because again, remember, I've said this so many times, but I know people in the comments are going to be mad from my placements, but this is for silver. An XM in silver can destroy a whole team sometimes. You could easily get an ace, because a lot of the times the other team won't be expecting it, especially if they're T side and you're defending CT, let's say on like Dust or something, and you just rush them. If you rush them in tons or through long and you manage to push up far enough, you could easily destroy them even when they have like SMGs or ARs, because they won't be expecting it, and 1 to 2 shots will kill one of them, and then you could pick off a considerable amount. And with the XM, I feel like you have to be less accurate than these guns. It's a bit more of like a spray and pray, even though it's a shotgun, and has a lot more ammo, which again in silver helps a lot. And after that, we have the Mag 7, and the Mag 7 I feel like is a decent gun. I feel like it's better than the Nova just because it has better like damage and range. With the Nova and sawed-off, I feel like they feel like a single bullet, like it goes straight. Whereas the Mag 7, like the bullets kind of spread out. And when you get close to someone and you get a shot off, they're guaranteed to die. This gun feels like more a gun that you just get 1 or 2 picks and then you expect yourself to die after. But that is not a bad thing, because it could really help you destroy the other team's eco when they have better guns and you manage to get a pick with the Mag 7. And yeah, obviously in silver, you're not worried as much as about eco, sorry. It's not going to make that big of a difference, but it still does, because the other team's just going to buy whatever gun and they're going to be like, oh, whatever. But you know it makes a difference. You know if you can't let them get their best guns when they probably haven't had as much time to practice with all of the guns, it does make a difference. And now we're done with the shotguns. That was pretty quick. I feel like there isn't much to go over them anymore. Like, they're just there. They do their job. Like, you know what the shotguns are supposed to do. So now let's move on to the SMGs. Okay, so now we are on to the SMGs, and let's start off with the Mac 10. The Mac 10, I think, is decent. The main reason for this is because it's cheap, And when you're losing rounds, it's a great round for low eco. Like you could just buy this around, save up, maybe get a couple kills, maybe not win the round, but you could help destroy the other team's eco a bit and then get some more money yourself. And Mach 10 rush is a very good strategy in silver. I keep specifying that because again, in silver, a lot of stupid strategies work. And rushing with the Mach 10 can be very efficient on almost every map. I guess it's better for maps with corners because if the other teams have like scouts or even ops, if you lost a couple rounds and you buy the Mac 10, the Mac 10 can actually not be good. That's why it's only indecent because it's not good in every situation. And yes, it's hard for a gun to cover all occupations and do everything. But again, the Mac 10, it does what it's supposed to. It's a fast gun, you rush in, you're like the infantry pretty much. Like again, you expect yourself to die in a way with the Mac 10. You go and you get a kill or two. And if the rest of your team also have Mac 10s, you could destroy a team sometimes by simply rushing in. With the Mach 10, you do have to rush in, though, I feel like. Otherwise, it won't work if you don't push up far enough. And that's why I only recommend it mostly on T side. I'd say for pushes if you go very fast. Otherwise, you'll just die. Alright, now we have the MP9. And the MP9, this might upset some people. I'm going to put it into situational for the simple fact that what it can do, the Mach 10 can do, but I feel like better, and it's cheaper. So obviously, it's more cost efficient. And the MP9, you can use it for like mid-range, closer to long range, but it's not going to do a lot of damage, and it does not have good armor penetration. And in silver, again, I keep mentioning that because I need you guys to understand. In silver, you're not going to hit every shot. And if you even miss half your shots with the MP9, it's going to take forever to kill your opponent from a decent range. And yeah, Excel's only really at close range and has a high rate of fire, which is good. But again, you will run out of ammo very quickly, and in silver, the other team, all they do is push. They probably won't expect many baits, and they might rush you while you're reloading, and that could be an issue with MP9, because you're going to run out of ammo pretty fast. Alright, we are back. Sorry, I had to take a quick break. And I changed shirts. But now we're back, and let's look at the MP5. So the MP5, I think, is also situational. I don't really care too much about the order of these because they could all technically be interchanged. They're in the same uh like thing. Maybe I don't know, but yeah, I feel like between MP5, MP9, I feel like the MP9 is better because the MP5 I feel like is just worse at everything than the MP9 is. Like close range, MP9 is better. Farther range, the MP5 might be a bit more accurate, but it does not do a lot of damage still, so that's not great. So yeah, I think that's like the major issue with it. And I guess you could argue with all the SMGs, they're not great at a distance. But at the same time, if you're using this for close or average or middle distance, whatever you want to call it, uh, the other SMGs do the same job but better. Alright, now we're moving on to the PP Bison. And honestly, I do not use the PP Bison a lot. I don't feel like many people do. There's not a point. It's a very underrated gun, but I feel like that's deserved. It's not something you're gonna see much, and it's not gonna be something like, oh my god, they have a PP Bison. No one's gonna be scared of a PP Bison. So for that reason, I think it's very situational. Because all the SMGs have a use, but you have to think about it. If you're buying a SMG, what makes your SMG different from the rest? Like, what type of strategy are you going for? Are you doing something cheap, close range? Are you trying to just like tag up the other team, get some picks maybe, get some good shots? But then there's the PP Bison. I feel like the PP Bison doesn't really cover any fields on its own. Whatever it does, everything else does. All the other SMGs do just way better. All right, now we're moving on to the MP7, and the MP7, I honestly think it might be the best SMG. It's a bit more expensive, but as actually pretty good like damage from middle range, and it's still good with short range. Does not have the fire rate of the Mac 10 or the MP9, but it's reliable. It does everything that you need for a SMG. It could get picks, it could kill people pretty fast, and actually has range, and range matters. And it also has armor penetration, and we haven't talked about that much, because usually with the pistols and shotguns, you're not going to talk about armor penetration. But the MP7 has good armor penetration. The MP9 does not. That's also another reason why I think it's more situational, because unless your opponent doesn't buy armor, but after the first or second round, most of the people do, so that's why the MP9 is also lower. MP7, great against armor, or better than most of the SMGs. Alright, now we have the UMP 45. And the UMP, I just think it's situational. It's very close to the MP5, I feel like. Obviously, I feel like the MP5 is more accurate, and this one's a bit more spray, but they're very similar in their capabilities, and it does not provide much as a active weapon and trying to like take advantage of a site or simply killing enemies. I don't feel like it's very efficient in anything, and there's not really much to say about it. I guess you could say for its price, it's decent, but again, you have the Mac 10 as an option, and I feel like the Mac 10 is just better than these guns. And yes, of course, this has better range, but for the price difference, it's good. And for the job it's supposed to do, the Mac 10 does a way better job than this. All right, now on to the P90. And the P90 is somewhat expensive, but I feel like for its price, obviously for its price, it's not great, but for what it can do, I would put it either bottom of decent or top of situational. And it's better for both of these SMGs because it has good ammo. Yes, it has a high rate of fire, which is good, but also could be bad if you shoot too fast. But its problem is it doesn't do a lot of damage. But for a SMG, I think it does do its job. And you may argue for the price it's not worth it, but I think after a couple of rounds, when you're onto the SMGs, it makes sense to invest in a P90. And again, because you're in silver, you're gonna see a lot of different people with different strategies, not knowing what they're doing. And while someone else is trying to use like a bigger gun or something, trying to get a couple clean shots off you, you could just be holding down with the P90 or just like spraying, and you might get lucky and kill them faster. And it's still good with close range. Obviously, it's not going to be the well-landed shot with a shotgun, but it covers a bit of everything. It's not good long range. You can pull off some shenanigans middle range, but short to mid range is where it excels. Now we're moving on to the ARs. And at first glance, the Galil may not seem like a great gun, but I think it's a reliable gun. It's cheap, and for new players, it kind of gives you the groundwork of how CS works, especially in silver, where like you could afford to miss a couple shots and then get a good shot. The Galil is it's just there. It's just good. Obviously, it's not nowhere near S tier because it does not have the firepower, but it's a good early round gun, not game. And again, it does everything it's supposed to. I'll leave it under the P250 because I feel like if you're comparing pistols to AR, the P250 is a better early round pistol than the Galil is a early AR, if that makes sense. Because I'm kind of comparing them in their own categories. Alright, after that, we have the AUG. And first off, I love the AUG. I'm pretty biased towards the AUG because I used to play a lot of COD growing up, so obviously I love scope guns, but I feel like it does deserve some credit. It's very undershadowed, the scope guns in this game. So I'm going to be putting it in bottom of A. Is it better than the Galil? I think it is. So I'll be putting it over it just because the Galil, it's reliable. Like anyone could use a Galil, I feel like, in my opinion. Like you could give any player one. Let's say they have no money and you have a bit of money to spare. You just give them a Galil, and it's a great gun to have when you don't have money. But for the AUG, it is expensive, and you might argue for what you're getting, it's not worth it. But I feel like for remember, a lot of silver players who probably came from other games where scoping is a thing, they probably might lean more towards the AUG just because it's scoped and they feel more comfortable with it. And the AUG and all the scope guns play pretty different to the other weapons in the how you have to use your fire rate and where you're aiming, what you're looking at, and it's still good for holding angles. Obviously, no good AUG player is going to beat a good op player, but remember, we're in silver. So again, you just need to tap a couple times, get a headshot, and any AUG player could definitely outpeak a op if they're not already holding the angle. Pretty much with the scoped weapons is who's holding what angle first. So I think for that reason, the AUG deserves A tier. Alright, next up we have the FAMAS. And the FAMAS, I always hear people comparing the FAMAS and the Galil on what's better. And the conclusion that a lot of people come to is just that like the Galil is cheaper and it also is a bit better. So I'm not saying the FAMAS is bad, but what obviously in CS you have to remember now you can't choose any gun, you have to choose your loadout. So if you're choosing the FAMAS over the Galil, either you just prefer the FAMAS more, which is fine, not saying that it's bad, it's situational, I feel like, so it still has its uses. But for the average player in Silver, they're gonna have a way easier time with the Galil than the FAMAS. Alright, now let's move on to the most controversial one, the AK. And I really want to put the AK in S tier because obviously it's really good. But for silver, the AK I feel like could be used very incorrectly. Like it's great for headshots and it's decent at body shots. But a silver is not going to land those headshots every time. But I feel like it is still good enough. I feel like the AK is still good enough to be put in S tier, no matter what. Because again, other people coming from different games are going to lean more towards these type of guns, even the Galil a bit. But the AK is a good gun, and out of all the guns in CS, it's one of the easier ones to get used to, and it's good to put effort into getting good with the AK. Like every time you're playing CT side and you win a round, everyone's going to be looking for the AKs on the ground, even if you're silver. Like that's the known fact that AKs are good. Alright, now let's move on to the M4A1S. And the M4A1S, I actually like. I think it's another decent gun. There's a lot of guns in decent for the simple fact that these are guns that like you might get every couple rounds just to like play with them, get a bit better with them, try something different. But these aren't guns that you're going to be a pro at. No one's going to be a pro with any of these guns, but they're all good. Maybe if people put more time into these guns, they could be higher up on the list. But for the simple fact that no one's going to choose these guns over anything in the higher tier, limits your capabilities. And especially for the M4A1S. Because it's trying to be a long range gun, but has like the damage of a mid-range gun, if that makes sense. Because with the silencer, obviously it helps in its accuracy, I feel like, but it just does not have that power to be a long-range gun. But it's still helpful in silver to have that extra accuracy with worse players. If it's just a bit more accurate, it could put it up. It could put this gun up over other ones. For example, the M4A4, I think is situational. I honestly do think the M4A1S is better for the sole fact that it's more accurate. I feel like it's more accurate. Yes, the M4A4 has more power, but I don't think that makes that big of a difference if you're missing more shots. And in CS, I feel like the most important thing is just to hit your shots. Because if you at least do some damage, your teammates could finish him off, and assists do play a big role in this game. Like sometimes in my games, I could have like over 1,000 damage, but only like 4 kills, but I have a lot of assists. because getting assists and doing that damage does help a lot. So I feel like the placement of these two are fair. You kind of have to compare them hand at hand, just because they are pretty similar. Obviously, this pack's more of a punch, but this is just better overall, I feel like, and it's cheaper. Alright, now the SG553. I like the SG, but the AUG I feel like is considerably better. Obviously they're on different sides, but it still plays a role comparing the guns. Because if someone has an AUG and you have an SG of your similar skill, the AUG should win, I feel like. But I don't feel like the SG is bad. I feel like compared to the AUG though, it is situational. Especially since the SG is T-sided and the AUG is CT-sided. And scoped guns, I feel like, are better on CT side because it's easier to camp angles. So I feel like it's a fair place for it, and it hurts me because I really like the SG. I like scoped guns, so that's why I obviously put the AUG so high. But the SG is considerably worse, I feel like, and the drawbacks is it's on T side, so it's not going to be as useful. All right, now we're moving on to the I didn't put the heavies because obviously the heavies and shotguns are in the same category, but I wanted to put like the heavy machine guns in their own category because I feel like they, not all of them, obviously there's only two, but they do deserve respect. So let me start off with the M249. And the M249, sadly, as much as it is so fun to use sometimes, it's it it should be in trash. There's no reason you should be using it, especially over the Negev. Like, I joke around with my friends saying that M249 is good, and yeah, like for sure, you could get some really good plays. You could even get aces with it. It has a lot of ammo and has good damage. It has good armor penetration. But the problem is it's way too expensive to be viable. Like maybe you get it once or twice in a game, and then even then you could die instantly from a op or something. So there's no real reason you should be using it, especially when actually first let me put the AK over the USP when the Negev is a gun. I genuinely think the Negev is the best gun in silver. And you might be wondering, now is where everyone's gonna go crazy in the comments if you watch this video, is no, the op is better, blah 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 blah. But again, you have to remember this is silver. The Negev can easily mow down anyone with any gun because they're not going to get a shot fast enough. They're not expecting you. If you just pop around a corner, if they're not holding down sights on that corner, you could easily mow down more than half the team in just a couple of seconds. And the Negev, it's not hard to use. You literally hold down and pull down on your screen. You just aim down pretty much because it has such a high recoil. But then at one point it stays close to the same spot. And yeah, I've missed a lot with the Negev too. But even then, like even if you miss a lot, all you have to do is slightly move your mouse and you kill someone. And some of the best strats for the Negev, I feel like, is the Mirage hiding under Palace. And higher levels, it's not going to work. You're going to get mollied. Even in silver, sometimes people expect it. But a lot of the time, if you hide there and you have a teammate bait out, the enemy team's just going to rush out if they're pushing A. It's honestly even good if you're just hiding under Palace and then the enemies decide to push mid. Because you could cover pretty easily from jungle or connector. If you're hiding under Palace, you just hold down, and it gives your team time to come and rotate. That's the thing people do not realize about the Negev, is that it gives you time. Because when you're holding down, only dumb players are going to push. Either dumb players or really good players, and they somehow outpeak you. They just jump over your bullets and like matrix dodge through the Negev somehow. Because while you're holding down, the Negev is a laser. It's very hard to get through. And also, my second favorite map, honestly my favorite map, not like overall, but just use the Negev on, is Inferno. Because if you go to Banana on Inferno and hold down, you've probably seen in my videos, if you're watching this, I'll show gameplay of that now, this is the best strat, easily. Because like this, they can't get through. Yes, they can molly you, yes, they can nade you, yes, they can flash you. But if you have two players holding down the Negev like this, there isn't much they could do. Obviously, they could go to the other site, but if two people stay here and you have 3 players on the other side, you practically always have the advantage on CT side for the Negev. And now you might be asking, well, you haven't said anything about the Negev on T side. Well, that's because the Negev is still good on T side. Obviously, it's not even close to the level of it being good on CT side, but the Negev still provides like cover fire on T sides, like maps like Mirage, where you could cover snipers. If you get a fast peek, you could hold down with the Negev. It still works. And if you go B through apps, you can still hold down looking through window. And yes, this is the part where like when the other team has ops, like the biggest counter to the Negev is a op. But that's why I'm able to put the Negev at the top of this list because people aren't that good with ops yet, not in silver. Like I said, if they practice the op, yes, but in every game you run into, there's not going to be a pro op player. So the Negev is pretty much like viable all the time. The scout for silver, I really want to put it high because the scout in a way could be the best gun again. It's a one shot to the head, even through armor. But for silver, I feel like it's situational. And I really like the scout. But you remember, you're not going to get headshots every round with this. I feel like the scout, literally the name of it, the scout, it's good for gathering information. Like on Mirage, or sorry, on Dust if you peek through mid, or any map that has like a large opening or anything, it's easy to see how many people are going to what area, and maybe you could tag them up and your teammate could finish them off later, or even you pull out your pistol and finish off the player. Because it does like roughly 70 damage, the scout, to the body. So I feel like that is a fair placement for it, because the reason the op is so much better is it's one shot to the body. I've been shitting on the op a lot this video, but I feel like it still has to be S tier. It's just that it's not as consistent because you don't know what type of player is gonna get the op. And once the op is in the eco, that changes the whole course of the game. Guns like Negev, that's also why I couldn't put the AK at the top, because guns like AK and ops, when you lose that gun and you allow the other opponent to get that gun, it gives them a big advantage. But guns like Negevs, not a lot of people use them, not a lot of people like them, but it's genuinely very good. But for that reason, the op can't be at the top, but it's still very good, because it's simply a body shot. You just scope in, do the super scoped in, so you click twice on your mouse, and you cover any angle, and you just stay there and you don't move. And in low level, players aren't gonna know smokes, they're not gonna know flash as well, and you could pretty much destroy a whole team with the op. But it has very easy counterplay if you're facing a bad player. And in silver, there's a lot of people who think they're good with ops who aren't. And sometimes ops can even turn a team against itself, just from who wants it, and when you lose it, your whole team gets mad at you. Alright, now let's go on to the G3S G1, that's what it's called? Yes, I think so. So the autos, everyone hates the autos. I know it's a forbidden rule to use the auto, but I feel like when you really factor in for silver, that the autos are pretty good. But the G3, I feel like, is situational. I honestly feel like there's a big difference between the Scar and the G3. Just for the simple fact, I feel like there's the fire rate. I don't know. The G3 just feels very wonky. It does not feel good. But I'll kind of group these up together because they are pretty similar. Only the fact that I don't like the G3. But the Scar, I think, is a good gun. I feel like it's only in reliable. The only reason it's not S, it's because of the money, I feel like. Obviously, it's only a bit more than the Scar. But if you actually look about the average amount you make money in a round, you could get a op, but you won't be able to get a Scar. You'll just be a little bit off. So the fact that you could usually get an auto around earlier, sorry, a op around earlier than the auto makes a big difference. But people get mad at the auto. The auto is like a psychological weapon. And I feel like for that reason I have to put it top of A. Just because it does so much mental damage to the other team that actually like changes the way the game is played. This is the only gun that can make the other team start hacking. This is the only gun that can make you get banned for using it, which again is a negative. So you might think, yes, instant F tier, but once the op is in play, the auto is in play, it changes the game, and it's actually really good in silver because it's an easy tap fire gun, and unlike the op, it's not like one shot and then you have to like bolt back. Like the auto, you just spam click. And on any map again with a long hallway or narrow hallway or anything where the other team has to push or for you to have great visibility, the auto is great. Again, the price is the one thing holding it back. And I think that's my list. I feel like rearranging. The reason I put a lot of the pistols at the front is just because you gotta give pistols credit. Like, they are good. Except these ones. I feel like the Deagle maybe is at the top just for the fact that you could get lucky with it, and luck again is a part of skill. But I feel like the worst gun in the game is the M249, and the best is the Negev. Because the Negev is so much better than the M249, and it's so much cheaper. And I won't say that this list is perfect, because I'm still not the best silver player, and I haven't played in a while. But I feel like this is a good list overall. I think it's not bad. Thank you for watching, and that's it.